It is my pleasure to have with us the executives from Extreme Networks here to talk about cybersecurity and cyber risks. Today, we're joined by Ed Meyercord, who's the CEO, John Shoemaker, who is the chairman of the board, and John Abel, who is the Chief Information Officer. So, gentlemen, pleasure to have you with us and to talk about these very, very contemporary matters. So let's get to it. And Ed, as the CEO, I want to go to you first because you're kind of the person in the middle in terms of you're running a technically advanced company. How have you approached assessing cyber risks with your executive team? And then how do you decide what's worth informing the board about or what's really not worth taking there? Because you are in the middle flow of the information with time pressure on both sides. How do you go about doing that job?
So thanks, Brad, and thanks for having us. And let me just start off by saying that I think this really is, it's a cultural issue in terms of what are the values of your company and how do you run the business. And two values that are very important inside of Extreme are candor, being real, honest, and then transparency, being open. And so we built a culture where we're sharing real information, and that transcends all the stakeholders at our company. And in the case of cybersecurity and IT and our investments, and the events that happen, with John and I and with the executive team and leadership, it's open. So we're transparent, and then it's very real. The same thing flows up through the board of directors. And so fortunately, we have an amazing board. We have the right chemistry. And so it works where we have this open and transparent and honest conversation. So I never have to worry as the CEO, when John Abel is going to present to the board, I'm never worried about what he's going to say, et cetera, because we're very open and transparent. And maybe we err a bit on the side of over communicating a bit, but in general, we have a regular cadence. Internally, if an event ever happened, I'd know right away from John and his team, and then we'd make a determination, and I would let the board know if it reached that level immediately. And then otherwise, we have a cadence. On the internal side, we meet monthly, and that's as an executive team with IT leadership. And then at the board level, we meet quarterly, and there's an update, as it relates to IT and security with KPIs. And then we do a deeper dive every 6 months. And I'll let these guys talk a little bit about that.
So one of the things I'm hearing you say that I think is hugely important for our students to understand is these are not ad hoc conversations. You have established a cadence with your management team and with the board for when these things are assessed. And then I hear you saying transparency. These things don't get pushed down where someone says, oh, we got a big risk here, but the higher ups don't really want to hear about it. So really trying to cultivate a value right, where that can happen. So maybe with that, let me pivot to John Shoemaker for a moment. John, you have served on many, many, many boards over time, and boards are very busy. And on one hand, you're delegating, you're trusting your leadership team, your executive team, to carry out and execute the operations of the firm. But on the other hand, cyber risks are just out there as ticking time bombs in so many firms. So, John, as chair, how do you ensure that you're allocating enough time and capacity relative to many board topics so that the board feels adequately informed in making risk trade-offs around the changing cyber threat landscape?
Yeah, well, I'd like to start by reinforcing what Ed said. I think everything starts with candor and trust. And of all the boards I've ever served on, Extreme Networks has the most open and candid communication and high level of trust between not only Ed and myself, but Ed's entire staff and then down, level below that. So that every director on the board, I believe, feels completely free to independently contact anybody in senior management and talk to them. There's no, you better check and let Ed Meyercord know that I'm doing that or whatever. And in fact, we've even taken it a step further, both for cybersecurity and many other topics, where each member of the board has an area of specialization and builds an in-depth relationship with one or two of Ed's direct reports. So for example, Kathleen Holmgren is a world-class expert in operations. She works with the ops group. So that's been a very important thing in all the supply constraints that have been going on. And we have that similarly across the board. And for example, I talk to Ed every Tuesday at 2 o'clock. I don't think we hardly ever miss a day. And we end up on the phone an hour or more with no agenda, just going through everything. And I said, okay, what's hot? What's going on? What do we need to know about? And if I think it rises to the point where I get a call with the board or something like that, we instantaneously do that. So we're agile, we're flexible. The other thing I would add is that we have built cybersecurity into our processes. So we delegated to the audit committee, continuous monitoring. We have an overall risk management process. What are the key topics of that process is cybersecurity. At every board meeting, each individual on Ed staff reports out on operational issues. So if there's an issue there on cybersecurity, it's spoken to. The board has ongoing education. We've kind of gone away from going to Stanford or someplace for a week. What we do is we bring outside experts in. And actually the first area we chose was cybersecurity, and John and his team have brought in outside people, and we just do a tutorial for the board. So the board gets to a level of knowledge where they feel like they can really understand the issues. We do, I don't know if Ed mentioned it, but we do what we call a deep dive. And one of the topics we've done on our deep dive, we'll take 3 hours and just to go through one topic, a different one each quarter. And so we've done cybersecurity in that area as well.
Well, John, you rattled off so many things that I really want to call out, because I know so many boards wrestle with even how to engage this. And so one of the things I've heard you say is you've got a structure where board members have some clear roles and responsibilities, whether someone chairs the audit committee and the audit committee is specifically delegated to have certain responsibilities, or assigned, I shouldn't say delegated, but you've also got your board being engaged as you go along and educated as they go along. Some of the boards that I interact with, I know sometimes, this all just sounds like a bunch of technical gobbledygook, and, there was a problem 5 years ago, and there's a problem 2 years ago, and it's going to be a problem a year from now. And so, let's kind of give me a checkbox. Yep, we had a report from the CIO, and
right.
We checked that box. And what I'm hearing from you is that Extreme has structured a level and process and depth of engagement that really is fairly leading for where a lot of firms are at today. So Ed, I might just go back to you and to John Shoemaker here for a moment. Have you guys templated? How does information come to the board? Are there, red, yellow, green reports? Are there progress bar reports? Is there a work plan for, the year? What's the structure of how you take what the executive team is doing and bring it to the board where the board can comprehend because there's just so many things happening?
Sure. Well, I'll start off with what John spoke about. We have a structured, unstructured call every week, if that makes sense. So at my level, and it's a very candid and open conversation. And part of the reason for that is that we have a good relationship, and then John also is very experienced from an operating perspective, and so we have it's a very good dialogue. What we do at the board level is we have our quarterly meetings, and we carve out 2 hours for KPI, our key performance indicator reviews, where each of the functional executives, I usually sit quiet, and my team goes through their KPIs with the board, and it's highly interactive. And so these are KPIs that have how are we doing relative to a target and a goal. And yes, are we green? Are we yellow? Are we red? How are we lining up? You have metrics, and so how we're doing relative to our goals. And then, depending on the quarter, we might dive deeper into one area, usually an area that needs more attention than another area. So it's a quarterly process where we have well-defined KPIs, and we report out. And it's my executive team, not just me, bringing the information.
And I think that's one of the most important things, is that boards find their structure and CEOs find their structure. And what I mean by structure is that there is a cadence of time intervals, and there's some way that information is presented in ways that the board can understand what risk they're going to delegate, what risk they really want to contract away to insurance or something, what risk they're going to go, the joint probability of that happening 3 things in a row. Okay, we'll just take that risk. We'll roll along with it. So maybe if I pivot to John Abel as the CIO, and
can I add one thing to
please.
What I said? Just I said, I think it's important, Brad, given where you're going with this. My philosophy in working with Ed and trying to build a board composition, who's on the board, is we've created a board that's a mirror image of the management team. So we've got a world-class marketing expert, finance expert, operations expert, general management expert, a guy who was a CTO of a microprocessor company. Each one of these individuals, and we have 2 females, each one of these individuals works one-on-one with somebody on Ed's staff and has an in-depth, intimate relationship. They also have the necessary requisite experience so that they can have intelligent conversations and they can actually add value and coach and counsel Ed's staff. And our relationship is so high trust and candid that we do that on an everyday basis. And if you were to attend one of our board meetings, I think you'd find it more like an operational CEO staff meeting in a way than you would a typical governance board meeting. And, we have to balance the governance aspect of our responsibilities with being supporters. And we do that, I think, pretty well. But I think it's that underlying structure and capability of the members of the board working with the team that really allows us to function, in the way we do.
Well, that's very clear. I mean, that is a high-performing board that you have really filled the roles as deliberately as you have, for what area of expertise that they can bring to support the management team. And Ed, it takes a CEO who has confidence and trust in his or her team and their team, and how you enable your number 2s and number 3s to interact with a board of that caliber, because
well, yes, absolutely. So I need to have the confidence in my team, but I also have to have trust in the board, right? So with the board relationships, as everyone here knows, board members need to know the fine line between governance and being a board member and a good board member, and management. And so, board members know that our board, they know where that line is. And so we don't have board members kind of trying to jump in and do the jobs of the executive team, or trying to jump into a management role, which I think it's both sides of that work. The competence, and competence of the team, as well as an experienced board that knows where that line is.
Well, and I think we also both know that getting that really out of kilter, one way or the other, does not work. So you guys seem to have really found that lane that makes that work, and particularly around such a technical and such a big risk factor topic as cyber risks.